Welcome to week 3. All right, so good job on the discussion board. That is the most disagreement I'll ask from you, I guess, on the discussion board, because we're actually looking at arguments for and against something. For the most part in this course, we will just be seeking to understand, right? And so now we're moving into the Americas, and we're going to figure out, what are some similarities and differences between the religions of the Americas. I think this is the kind of thing that most of you thought you were signing up for. You'll get into it probably. It's really interesting stuff from here on out with different religions. But I did want to clear up one thing on the discussion board. The moral argument tends to be one of the most misunderstood arguments for God's existence. So let me explain that one again. It is not a claim that if God does not exist, then we would all just be terrible people. It's not a what is it? It is the claim that if God does not exist, then morality, there would be no moral duties. That to have a moral duty, to have an objective right answer to right and wrong, requires some kind of lawgiver or some kind of person who creates such a thing. And we're not powerful on our own to create such a thing. We can't create morality, so it just wouldn't exist if God didn't exist. That's the moral argument. It's very controversial. It's interesting to think about. It's actually pretty related to the other main thing that I wanted to look at. So if God does not exist, then is life absurd? And most of you thought, no, life would not be absurd if God does not exist, for a variety of reasons. So Devin talked about how we're all still here. We all still have a life to live. So we'll find a way to make it meaningful, right? So that's the general strategy for the most part. It's just we can create meaningfulness on our own. It's not Thomas Nagel's strategy. Nagel thinks that is the absurd. That there's this big disconnect between how much weight you place on things and objectively, based on the view from nowhere, how much those things actually matter. But maybe he's wrong about that, right? That was the main response I saw on here, is effectively thinking that Nagel's wrong on that we can just make things be objectively meaningful by valuing them. Vanessa gave us some nice context with a couple of quotes from the book about the absolute. The absolute may be a deity, or a soul, or you'll find that some of these religions don't even worship a god or gods, and yet they still have an absolute. So is an absolute the same idea as meaningfulness? I guess would be the next question. There are different kinds of questions, but they are probably related, right? Actually related, especially by the moral argument we were just talking about. So if there are no god or gods, could value somehow exist anyway, just through this absolute bedrock? I don't know. You just have to think about what kind of thing is value and what could cause it to exist. So I guess I'll leave that for you to think more about. Amir also said, there's no quote unquote reason to be good, but you can still create it for yourself. That type of response. Malachi was one of them on the other side. There were not as many on the other side who agreed with the idea that life is absurd if God doesn't exist. So he pointed out there's no structure and there's no consequences, like period, no consequences after death, but just in general, no consequences. So if God doesn't exist, then it just life isn't fair, I guess. And why should I care about doing the right thing? Actually, I guess the deeper question is, why would there even be the right thing? But, okay. So I've wandered around this question long enough. You get the idea. It is a difficult question, and I did see a lot of good discussion on it. So good job. Let's keep going.